I looked across the dinner table at the man I'd built a life with, the father of my children, and listened as he told me he wanted a divorce because he'd fallen for someone younger.
25 years.
A quarter of a century of my life, summarized and tossed aside like a yellowing receipt. I felt the floor drop out from under me, the air catch in my lungs, and for a second, I thought I was going to be physically sick right there in our beautifully remodeled kitchen. He said it so calmly, so rationally, like he was discussing the weather or a faulty appliance, not the total nuclear destruction of our world. The part that still echoes in my mind, the part that makes my blood run cold, was the smug, expectant look in his eyes, like he was waiting for the predictable flood of tears and desperate pleading.
But that's not what he got.
What I eventually said to him not only left him speechless but also changed the entire course of our future, and his face, honestly, was a picture of pure, unadulterated shock. So, here's my question for you, right from the start, before I tell you all the gruesome details. Was I wrong to handle his midlife crisis and betrayal exactly the way I did, or was my final move a perfectly justified piece of karma? The story doesn't start with betrayal. It starts, as all good stories do, with love and a hopeful future.
Mark and I met in college.
He was the ambitious, slightly goofy finance major. I was the art student who probably should have been more concerned about my career path, but I was too busy falling head over heels. We got married young. 23 for me, 25 for him, and we were the absolute picture of a couple destined for great things, or at least, great comfort. Our early years were a struggle, a beautiful kind of struggle where we shared instant ramen and celebrated a new, slightly less rickety hand-me-down sofa like it was a lottery win. We worked hard, side by side. I put my art career on a back burner, not completely, but enough to manage the home, raise two incredible kids, our daughter, Emily, and our son, Liam, and support Mark as his career took off. And Mark, to his credit, was always grateful. For years, he was. He'd come home and tell me I was the anchor that kept his ship steady. He'd hug me tight and say, "I couldn't do any of this without you, Sarah."
Those words were my fuel.
They made the endless school runs, the budget balancing, and the late-night help with geometry worth it. We built a beautiful home, not just the physical structure, but a sanctuary filled with warmth, inside jokes, and the quiet rhythm of a marriage that had matured from a burning fire into a steady, reliable hearth. We were the couple people envied, the ones who made it, the ones who still held hands on the couch.
Mark's career really took off about 10 years ago.
He moved into a high-level executive position, the kind that came with a corner office, international travel, and a salary that made the old ramen days feel like a distant, absurd memory.
With the money came changes, subtle at first. The suits became sharper.
The watch became much more expensive. He started going to a fancy, new gym and traded his old, comfortable glasses for contacts. I was happy for him, truly. I encouraged him to enjoy his success. I even joked that he was finally having his glow up. I kept things stable at home, making sure his success didn't turn our family life into a circus. We had great kids, now in college and high school, both doing well, both knowing they had a rock-solid base to return to. We were entering the golden years of our marriage, the time when the heavy lifting of parenting was done, and we could finally travel, enjoy our wealth, and simply be together. That's what I thought, anyway. The signs, in retrospect, were blinding, but I was simply too trusting, too comfortable, to see them. He started working longer hours, which was normal for his role, but the excuses became flimsy.
He'd leave his phone face down on the counter.
He started picking fights over nothing. About the way I loaded the dishwasher, the dinner I cooked, my clothes. Things he had never, ever cared about before. I remember one painful evening he looked at me and said, "Sarah, you've gotten complacent. I need a wife who's still interested in growing." I was stunned. I was working part-time again, finally pursuing my passion for painting, volunteering, and managing our entire household. I was anything but complacent. It was then, seeing the cold, almost hostile distance in his eyes, that the first tendrils of real fear wrapped around my heart. I started looking. And, of course, what I found was exactly what I dreaded. It was an email thread, stupidly left open on our shared laptop. Not a smoking gun, not yet, but enough to make my stomach churn. Casual, overly familiar banter with an assistant from his office, a woman named Chloe. She was 26, barely older than our own daughter. The emails were full of inside jokes about late-night strategy sessions and how amazing she was at handling his schedule. It was all plausible deniability, corporate speak layered over a clear, unsettling intimacy. I confronted him, not with the emails, but with the change in him. I held his hands and looked him in the eye and said, "Mark, what's happening to us? I feel like I'm losing you." He scoffed, pulled his hands away, and delivered the first crushing blow. "Don't be so dramatic, Sarah.
Nothing is happening.
Maybe you need a hubby." That night, I cried into my pillow for hours, not just for the potential loss of my husband, but for the shattering realization that the man I loved was a coward, a man who couldn't even tell the truth to my face. The next 6 months were a quiet hell.
He became a ghost in his own house.
His clothes started smelling faintly of a new, expensive cologne. He was happy, a buzzing, secretive kind of happy, and that happiness was a direct weapon pointed at my heart. I felt myself fading, turning into the caricature of the aging, ignored wife he was clearly describing to his young admirer.
I knew I couldn't live like that.
I had to know. So, I did the cliché thing.
I followed him. It was a Tuesday night. He said he was at a late-night client dinner.
I sat in my old, beat-up car, parked 3 blocks from a trendy, upscale restaurant in the city.
And I watched.
He walked out, his arm draped casually around Chloe, her bright blonde hair contrasting painfully with the sophisticated black dress she was wearing. They were laughing, close, intimate. He hailed a cab, and they got in together, disappearing into the city night.
I didn't follow them further. I didn't need to.
The vision of his face, the relaxed, youthful smile he hadn't shown me in years, was all the proof I needed. I drove home in a daze, the silence of the empty car screaming louder than any argument could. I walked into our perfect, silent house, and that was the moment I realized I wasn't hurt anymore. I was furious. My pain crystallized into a cold, diamond-hard resolve.
He wanted someone younger? He wanted a clean break? Fine. But it was going to be on my terms.
I spent the next 2 weeks gathering information.
I hired the most discreet lawyer I could find.
I contacted an old friend, a forensic accountant, pretending it was for tax advice. I learned everything about our assets, Mark's bonuses, his retirement accounts, the complex legal structure of the house we'd built together. I went silent, focusing entirely on my strategy. He barely noticed my withdrawal, too wrapped up in his own little fantasy.
And that brings me back to the night he finally dropped the bomb.
Dinner, as I mentioned, in the kitchen. I had cooked his favorite meal, a final meal, if you will, for our marriage. He watched me with that strange, expectant look, and he took a deep breath. "Sarah," he started, his voice a low, theatrical rumble. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching lately, and I've realized I've been living a lie. I don't want to be this Mark anymore." He paused, probably for dramatic effect.
"I've met someone. She's given me a new perspective on life. She's younger. And I've asked her to marry me.
I want a divorce." The audacity of the man, already proposing to the new model before even telling his wife of 25 years he was leaving her.
It was the height of arrogance.
I put down my fork, the clatter a sharp intrusion into the silence. He was probably waiting for the sobbing, the histrionics, the pleading. But what about our life? Instead, I looked him dead in the eye, and the cold fury I'd been nursing finally surfaced.
So that's the situation I was in.
I had 2 options. I could break down, become the desperate, pitiful wife he expected, and probably get a mediocre, quick-fix settlement just to shut me up. Or, I could unleash the absolute, meticulously planned strategy one had spent 2 weeks developing. I had to make a choice that would define the next decade of my life and his. Before I tell you what I did, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have gone for the emotional confrontation, or would you have played the long, cold game?
Tell me your move.
I let the silence hang for a moment, just long enough for his self-satisfied smirk to fully form, for him to truly believe he had the upper hand. Then, I leaned back, took a slow, deliberate sip of my wine, and I smiled, a calm, utterly devoid of warmth smile that I knew would unsettle him. "Mark," I said, my voice as steady as granite, "that's wonderful news. Because as it turns out, I also don't want to be your wife anymore. I haven't for a long time."
His smirk instantly faltered.
He straightened up, confusion clouding his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked, genuinely thrown. "I'm talking about the fact that you've been having an affair with Chloe, your 26-year-old assistant, for the last 9 months," I stated, the word affair clean, surgical cut. I know about the client dinners that were actually intimate rendezvous. I know about the weekend trip you took to Napa for a conference, and I know she is now wearing the small, tasteful diamond necklace you told me was a holiday gift for your biggest client. I watched his face drain of color. The color of shock, of being caught, was instantly replaced by the hot flush of anger. You spied on me, he hissed, the volume rising. I did my due diligence, I corrected him calmly.
Which is more than you can say.
You see, while you were busy trying to recapture your youth with a woman who probably thinks the 90s were vintage, I was busy talking to my lawyer, the one I hired 2 weeks ago.
And my forensic accountant.
I paused for dramatic effect, then I delivered the final blow, the one that left him utterly, completely speechless. I'm not fighting you on the divorce, Mark.
I'm filing the papers tomorrow.
My lawyer is requesting the maximum spousal support and asset division based on your blatant marital misconduct, which, by the way, I have documented proof of. The house, all the kids' college funds, which are thankfully in my name, and a substantial portion of your pension and stock options that I helped you build from the ground up.
I let him absorb that. I watched his breathing stutter. But here's the part you really need to hear, Mark.
You wanted someone younger, someone new, someone who gave you a new perspective on life. I'm keeping the life. I'm keeping the comfort, the stability, the financial security that I maintained while you were out playing around. You, my dear, get to start over.
His jaw literally dropped.
He tried to speak, but only a strangled, pathetic sound came out. He was completely derailed, his confident script utterly useless against my prepared monologue. I stood up, pushing my plate away. The car in the garage, the red convertible, is for me. My lawyer has already notified the company to stop payment on your executive credit card, effective immediately.
And Chloe? That little apartment she lives in?
It's under an LLC that you own, which is a significant marital asset. My lawyer will be happy to explain to her why she needs to vacate immediately, or she can come and testify about your new perspective on life to the divorce judge. I'm sure your entire firm would love that story. He finally managed to speak, his voice a desperate, pleading whisper. Sarah, wait, you can't, this is ridiculous.
We can talk about this.
I'll drop her.
I shook my head, my eyes cold. It's too late for talking, Mark.
25 years of loyalty and partnership don't get dropped and then picked back up when your side piece decides she can't handle losing the perks.
You made your bed.
Now you get to sleep in the economy single version. The aftermath was exactly what I knew it would be. Mark's life went into a tailspin. He tried to fight me, but my legal team was ironclad. The evidence of the affair, while not strictly necessary for a no-fault divorce, absolutely tipped the scales in the asset distribution and spousal support talks. He had to liquidate a huge chunk of his investments. Chloe was gone within a week, turning her back on him the second the money dried up and the legal trouble started. The beautiful, new life he had envisioned with his younger lover evaporated into a puff of smoke. He moved into a tiny, overpriced apartment, while I stayed in our home, comfortable, financially secure, and finally, truly free.
He tried to appeal to the kids, but they saw right through him.
They were disgusted by his betrayal and, honestly, impressed by my strength and composure. They became my biggest advocates, and that, more than anything, was my true victory.
It's been a year since the divorce was finalized.
I've gone back to school. My art studio is now the brightest, most inspiring room in the house, and I'm dating a kind, intelligent man who makes me laugh, a real, genuine belly laugh.
Mark.
I hear his drowning in debt and regret, struggling to adjust to a life without the cushion of a family and a supportive partner. He wanted someone younger, but what I gave him was a mirror. I showed him the true, high cost of his selfish actions, and that cost was everything. The whole mess was a painful, humiliating chapter, but I walked away not as a victim, but as the master of my own fate. I took my grief, I turned it into power, and I rebuilt my world on a foundation that will never, ever be shaken by a man's ego again. I hope my story serves as a reminder to every woman out there. Know your worth, know your assets, and never let a man who betrays you dictate the terms of your future. Like this video if you were absolutely on my side throughout this whole ordeal, and you think I did the right thing by taking everything he built. Subscribe right now to my channel for more real, intense, and dramatic stories like this one. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section below. I'll be reading every single one.
I'll see you all in the next story.